Lil Durk is officially on trial, and prosecutors are now putting evidence in front of a jury that they say connects him to the 2022 shooting targeting Quando Rondo. But the defense says the government is trying to turn Durk into the big fish in a case where other people had their own motives. And today, some of the most important evidence has been about money, travel, text messages, surveillance video, and even a pair of pants. So let's break down everything that has happened in the Lil Durk trial as of today, August 26th, 2026. What is Lil Durk actually on trial for? Lil Durk, whose legal name is Dirk Banks, is facing federal charges stemming from an alleged 2022 murder-for-hire plot targeting Atlanta rapper Quando Rondo, whose real name is Tiquian Bowman. Prosecutors allege that the plot was retaliation for the 2020 killing of Durk's close friend and OTF artist King Von. But the alleged hit didn't go exactly as planned. On August 19th, 2022, shooters opened fire on a vehicle near the Beverly Center in Los Angeles.
Quando Rondo survived.
His cousin, Xavier Lul P. Robinson, was killed. Prosecutors allege at least 18 rounds were fired. Durk has pleaded not guilty and maintains that he wasn't involved in ordering the shooting. If convicted on the major federal charges, he could face life in federal prison. Why King Von is so important. The government's theory starts with King Von. Von was killed in Atlanta in November 2020 following a confrontation involving people connected to Quando Rondo. Prosecutors argue that Durk became motivated by revenge and eventually ordered an attack against Quando. The defense, however, is pushing a very different explanation. They've argued that other people involved had their own personal reasons for wanting revenge, and that doesn't prove Durk ordered anything. That's going to be one of the biggest questions for this jury. Was Durk actually directing the operation, or are prosecutors connecting him to actions other people carried out themselves? The pants that helped police. And here's one of the wildest pieces of evidence that has come up this week. Detective Warner Correas testified that investigators initially couldn't identify the masked shooters. Facial recognition wasn't giving them anything. Then investigators reviewed surveillance footage from an In-N-Out burger about 35 minutes after the shooting. One of the suspects was wearing black pants with the words, "Rats to riches." Investigators searched for the pants online and determined that they were sold at stores on Chicago's South Side. That eventually helped investigators identify DeAndre Wilson, also known as OTF. From there, investigators allegedly began connecting people in the group to Durk. The flights to California. Prosecutors are also presenting evidence about how people allegedly traveled from Chicago to California. Flight records reportedly showed DeAndre Wilson, David Lindsay, and Keith Jones arriving in San Diego on August 18, 2022. Other alleged participants, including OTF Jam and Asa Houston, also traveled to California. Prosecutors say Jason Smith paid for some of those flights using an American Express card connected to an Astronaut Sounds account. That account reportedly had cards associated with Durk, Smith, Ola Alibligan, and Durk's father. The government is using those financial connections to argue that Durk and people around him helped facilitate the trip. The BMW and the ski masks. Another major piece of evidence involves a white BMW M5 rented from VM Exotics. Investigators say GPS data placed the vehicle near a property in Encino that was rented by Ola Alibligan. Then, on August 18th, the day before the shooting, the BMW was reportedly tracked near an REI store in Woodland Hills. A receipt showed 4 black ski masks being purchased. Prosecutors are arguing that the masks resembled the face coverings seen on the shooters. The defense, however, is challenging the government's interpretation of these connections. The text messages. Digital evidence is becoming another huge part of this trial. On Tuesday, FBI agent Jaron Farmby testified about private messages involving Durk and Jason Smith. One message exchange between Durk and OTF Jam is also being heavily debated. Prosecutors say Durk wrote, "We ain't handing ourself over to them people." Followed by, "They got to do their job." The government argues them people was referring to police. The defense disputes that interpretation and says prosecutors are taking the messages out of context. And that's important because the meaning of these messages could ultimately come down to how the jury interprets the surrounding evidence. The cooperating witnesses. This might be one of the biggest battles of the entire trial. Several people connected to the alleged operation have cooperated with the government. That includes Kayvon Grant, ODF Jam, and Keith Jones. The prosecution is relying on testimony from people who were allegedly involved. But Durk's defense is attacking their credibility. For example, the defense has pointed out that OTF Jam reportedly met with investigators more than 30 times, while only some of those meetings were recorded. The defense also emphasized that Jones spent hours speaking with investigators without naming Durk as part of the alleged plan during those recorded sessions. So, the jury has to decide. Are these witnesses telling the truth, or are they saying what they need to say to help themselves? What the defense is saying. Durk's attorneys are basically telling the jury, you're looking at the wrong person. The defense argues that Durk is being portrayed as the mastermind simply because of his status, money, and connections. They've specifically pointed toward Kayvon Grant as someone who had his own motivation for revenge following King Von's death. The defense says Grant was with Vaughn after he was shot, and that the emotional impact of Vaughn's death gave Grant his own reason to pursue revenge. In other words, the defense wants the jury to believe that other people could have wanted Quando dead without Durk ordering them to do it. The 6ix9ine evidence. Here's another crazy development. Before trial, prosecutors fought to get a clip from a DJ Academics interview featuring 6ix9ine and Whack 100 admitted into evidence. The clip involves 6ix9ine discussing Durk and King Von. Judge Michael Fitzgerald ultimately allowed the excerpt to be used as evidence. That doesn't mean everything said in the interview is automatically proof that Durk committed a crime. It's evidence the jury can consider in the context allowed by the judge. Durk's other charges. There's another important development that people need to understand. Earlier this year, prosecutors attempted to add additional racketeering-related allegations involving Chicago. Durk's lawyers fought to have those charges separated from the Los Angeles case. And they won that fight. Judge Michael Fitzgerald ordered those new Chicago-related racketeering allegations to be tried separately rather than combining them with the Los Angeles murder-for-hire trial. That's a significant victory for Durk's defense because the current jury isn't being asked to decide that entire collection of allegations in this trial. Where the trial stands right now. The trial is currently underway in federal court in Los Angeles. Jury selection began last week and opening statements followed. The prosecution has now started presenting witnesses and evidence. As of Wednesday, August 26, 2026, the jury has heard testimony involving surveillance footage, travel records, financial connections, vehicles, masks, and communications. The prosecution's overall argument is that this wasn't random. They say Durk wanted revenge, helped facilitate the operation, and that the shooting was the result of a coordinated murder-for-hire plan. The defense says prosecutors haven't proven that Durk ordered the attack and that they're relying too heavily on people with their own motives and potential incentives to cooperate. The biggest questions the jury has to answer. By the end of this trial, the jury is going to have to sort through several major questions. 1. Did Durk actually order the hit? 2. Did he knowingly provide money or resources for the operation? 3. What do his text messages actually mean? 4. Are the cooperating witnesses credible? 5. Do the flights, cars, masks, and financial records establish Durk's involvement, or simply show connections between people around him? 6. Did the government prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt? And that's where the LIL DURK trial stands as of August 26, 2026. The prosecution is building a case around revenge, money, travel records, surveillance footage, cooperating witnesses, and digital messages. But Durk's defense is fighting back by arguing that prosecutors haven't established that Durk himself ordered the shooting and that some of the people involved had their own reasons to seek revenge. And remember, Lil Durk has pleaded not guilty, and the allegations against him are not convictions. This trial is far from over. So if you want me to keep breaking down every major witness, piece of evidence, and courtroom development as it happens, make sure you subscribe because we're going behind the bars.